Hey Legacy community, it's Terramaster and welcome to part 4 of the Battle City Box review, and with me today for the full video is Lucas Gaylord. Hey Lucas.
Hey man, I'm excited for the new box.
Yep, we're all excited for the new box. Let's get right into what we're going to talk about today. And what we're actually going to talk about first is some skills, starting with some underused old skills. So the first ones we want to talk about are Shadow Reborn and Call of the Haunted. Now, so far, these skills have not seen any competitive play in speed duels, but we feel like with the cards in the box, there's a chance that you could see some play with the skills. Now, since Call of the Haunted is a lot less usable, it has very specific times where it can be good. Let's talk about that one first. So it's pretty much just based off the trap card Call of the Haunted. And now what's the only benefit Call of the Haunted has over Shadow Reborn?
Yeah, so Call of the Haunted, you start with a -1 in your hand. So that's why you don't want to play it always. But Shadow Reborn doesn't let you inflict damage to your opponent. So if you use Foolish Burial with something like Obelisk, you can use Call of the Haunted, you revive Obelisk, and then you can go for the 4,000 damage and try to go for a game. That's something that you can't do with the Shadow Reborn. Aside from that, Shadow Reborn is better in every other aspect.
Yeah, exactly. So Call of the Haunted also has the weakness that it's a continuous trap. So if you use it like in a normal game, like if you're not trying to OTK with Obelisk, then it can just get taken off the field with, Cosmic Cyclone, Dust Tornado, whatever. And Shadow Reborn is a skill, so it's safe from card effects like that.
Yeah, and now the question is why is Shadow Reborn better now? What did the box give us that we're talking about Shadow Reborn?
Well, one preview I have that I'm going to show is a Relinquished deck where Shadow Reborn can be good. Now, this is actually originally... Is it your idea?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. I think it was you who made... an expanded, you made Relinquished with Shadow Reborn. But now that we have pre-prep, Relinquished is a lot more consistent, and you no longer need the Pegasus skill to summon Relinquished. So this way, you can finally use Relinquished... use Shadow Reborn to bring Relinquished back. Alright, so Shadow Reborn is useful in Relinquished, and here's a replay of a deck. Let's quickly set up speed duels. Alright, so you see you open Foolish Burial, and here's where you can set up your Relinquished loop right away by sending your Illusionist Faceless Magician directly to the graveyard from your deck. Then you get a new card, which is Pre-Prep, which is specifically really good ritual support. So it lets you search the ritual spell and the ritual monster. So I actually searched Pre-Prep here, hold on a minute, as I put it back, and actually searched the Black Illusion Ritual, there we go. Alright, so now you can use your second Foolish, because look, the hand we got here was 3 spells and I think it was 4 spells, whatever. So either way, right now you have 3 spells in Relinquished left, so you have nothing to tribute for Relinquished is the point. So what could you do with Foolish Burial in order to get Relinquished fusion material? Not fusion, ritual material. Sphere Kuriboh. So we buried the Sphere Kuriboh with the second one, and then you can use Black Illusion Ritual. So Foolish Burial has 2 uses in the Relinquished deck, Foolish Burial is a really versatile card, we all know that, right? So even if you're going first, it's not a bad play to summon Relinquished, because for one, you already have your loop set up, and even in a worst case scenario, let's say your opponent is playing Conflict, right? And they take it, they tribute it, they hit you with Jinzo. Right, now my turn again. You draw, Wonder Wand. Great. Here's where you activate your Shadow Reborn. So for speed duels, we're at 4,000. Let's say you got hit by a Jinzo. Now you're paying the cost for Shadow Reborn, right? You bring back your Relinquished if you want. Or, the better play here is probably to bring back your Faceless. Then you activate your Wonder Wand. You send it with the Wonder Wand. You draw 2. And now your Faceless activates and you bring back your Relinquished. So you not only have your Relinquished pretty much came back for free after your opponent used their skill, but now you also have 3 cards in your hand to support it. So you suck a monster, And then if you want, you can suck another monster by summoning Relinquished again, or you can just tribute for Jinzo, or be a Relinquished player. Be patient, because you can't attack. You won't do damage to them this turn anyway, right? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I also want to say that you see that Jinzo, it's really good because you can tribute Faceless, and then you bring Jinzo and then bring the Relinquished. But now you can also do a foolish play. You dump Jinzo, use the skill, no traps. You can also play Spell Canceller for the same reason, but you have to be careful because you rely on spells. But I think it has a lot of synergy with Foolish Wario and the skill, so you can run a lot of things with that deck. But yeah, I think it has a lot of synergy with the skill.
Yeah, a lot of synergy, a lot of different things you can do with the skill. There's obviously Jinzo, there's Faceless. You can just bring back Relinquished if you want to play Thousand Eyes Idol and do it, but then you would have to play Polymerization. But if you do want to do that, you can make a Thousand Eyes Restrict deck with this as well. A lot of different options with this, but let's go ahead and show the full deck. Okay, here's the full deck. Obviously, you have your big Relinquished package, which is Black Illusion Ritual, Relinquished, Pre-Prep to search those two, Faceless to set up your loop. Now, I originally had 3, but I cut this down to 2 after a little bit of testing, because with 3, the problem is sometimes you draw Faceless and Foolish Burial, and that's kind of the same thing, and you won't draw Pre-Prep or your Relinquish combo. So it becomes a little bricky. So I think 2 Faceless is enough with 3 Foolish. It's like playing 5. Then obviously you have your Sphere Kuribo, which is both protection and ritual fodder. You have Jinzo. We talked about how good that is in the replay and why that's good for this deck. And I threw in Breaker because something cool that was pointed out to me was that Breaker can destroy your own spells and traps, not just your opponent's. So you can use it to pop your opponent's back row, yes, but you can also use it to free Relinquished's equip, and then equip another monster to it. So Breaker is very versatile to be used in a deck like this. So that's why I put in 2 Breakers. And then you've got 3 Book of Moontail. Again, you can either use it to protect yourself from an opponent's monster or to just reset your Relinquished. And that's it. I mean, pretty simple deck. You summon Relinquish, you bring it back. You guys saw it. Any other thoughts on this, Lucas?
Yeah, no, I just think the deck is very solid. You have to side deck Santa Claus because your deck has a big weakness to Spell Canceller. And I'm gonna tell you right now, you and your deck list has to be adapted to Spell Canceller. It's gonna be part of the meta.
Yeah.
So if your deck loses to Spell Canceller, side in Santa Claus, at least. So that's the case here.
Yeah. I will say this though, that if my opponent cannot protect their Spell Canceller, that is another benefit of Breaker, right? So unless they have a trap to protect Spell Canceller, Breaker can take care of it. So there's also that. So maybe you want to play 3 Breakers. I don't know. This obviously needs more testing. Okay.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So you've got Lava Golem also in the side deck, just because it's an option you can play if you feel like your opponent has a way to kind of either outstall you or outswarm you. Whatever you need Lava Golem for, you give them a 3000 body and then you just suck it. You've got Dijin in case you need to play more around traps and just one Jinzo isn't enough. You can side Spell Canceller yourself. Now obviously this is dangerous because it can cut off your follow-up, but if you think that you can do it like to lock down the game, like once you're already in control, then it's okay. But I mean, again, this is why this is just an option. Jar of Avarice if you need to recycle and you feel that it's a slow game in the matchup. Same thing with Dark Eruption, is just a faster recycle of just 1 card. And there's this other Dijin, which I even forgot existed. And that's because nobody ever really has played this one in Speed Duels competitively, but it could be useful here in that it can actually have a little bit of hand control to it if your Relinquish gets to attack, which because we're actually using the spell, the ritual spell, there's no battle phase restriction. So that could be something. And then obviously Lost Wind is just a solid side deck card in what this meta could be, which is a lot of special summon monsters, especially unions. Anything else you want to add to that?
Nah, I think that's enough. Also, one thing about this deck, and I think Trimakaru is the best witness, is that you can be too fast. You could lose on your own via deck out. So if you want to play the Pharaoh's Treasure for the Infinite Loop or another jar, just in case, you can do so, because the deck can be real fast.
Yeah, so there's Pharaoh's Treasure really quick in case you don't know. I'll let you read that card. So yeah, so you can play Pharaoh's Treasure, you can play a second jar, you can even play the old jar mask loop if you want with Mask of Darkness, which will recycle your jar. So, I mean, if you feel like you need to slow down or need a way to slow the game down at the end, then you do something like this, but lots of options. The point is that...
Even the Golden Ladybug.
Oh, that's right. Even the Golden Ladybug. Yeah. Even the Golden Ladybug, if you just feel like you need stall for LP. Yeah. So, a lot of different directions to go with this deck, but the point is that this is one of the decks that can make Shadow Reborn viable. And as you saw in the replay, it's actually like really, really dangerous to just be able to bring back a Relinquished from the graveyard after your opponent thinks they've dealt with it by tributing it or by conflicting it or whatever. So that's really what makes the deck a lot scarier than it was, in that it's more consistent, and because of that you can use something like Shadow Reborn. Now with the Reborn skills out of the way, we want to talk about the Psychic skills, which are underused and have already been around. So you've got Millennium Eye, Millennium Necklace, Prescience, and Aroma Strategy. Now these all allow you to either look at your opponent's hand, Millennium Eye, at the start of the duel, at the top of their deck at the start of the duel, that's Necklace. Prescience, which has a condition of your opponent has to have double your life points to look at the top card of their deck and your deck. And the Aroma Strategy is just the whole duel. You can look at the top of your deck anytime. Now the reason we're talking about these cards is that the box gave us some cards that actually have synergy, specifically with these skills, that they have an effect that is very good if you know what's either on top of your opponent's deck or in their hand or on top of your own deck. So I'm going to let you talk about these cards. Go for it.
So Millennium Eye, it's been used since the beginning of Speed Duels, when we're going to have many skills, and it didn't see any other use because it doesn't do anything. But now we got Mind Crush, so you can use Millennium Eye. First turn, you look at their hand. Then if you have your Mind Crush, you declare the name of the cards that you want to discard, and then you leave them with less cards in the hand. Then you can use cards like Drop Off, and you don't allow him to draw. Or you can use cards like Mysterious Guard to return a card to the top of the deck. So you're basically playing a hand control deck with this skill. You can also play with other skills. You can also use Millennium Necklace, because you can use the Mind Crush with Conscription. So you can manipulate the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. You know what they're gonna draw, so you can use Mind Crush, or you know what's in the top, so you can use Conscription and then take their strong monster. But yeah, that's the use for the hand control deck.
Just really quick, Aroma Strategy can be used with Archfiend's Oath, which is a new card we got. So Prescience too, but Prescience, the issue is you have to lose 2,000 life points first, which is hard. But you can do that with Mirror Wall, I guess, but it's easier to just play Aroma Strategy if you're going to use Archfiend's Oath. So Archfiend's Oath is, as long as you know what the top card of your deck is, it just lets you draw it. Otherwise, you'll just mill it if you get it wrong. It does have a cost of 500 life points, so watch out for that. However, if you can get a once per turn draw card, that's such a good skill. It's worth 500 life points if you can find a good enough deck to use it in, like a deck that doesn't need another skill. Just that once per turn draw card, having 3 spell cards in your deck that become once per turn draw card, is just really, really good. And if you want to, you can just call it wrong and just mill the top card of your deck. So just an interesting interaction there. Don't really have a deck for you on Aroma Strategy, but we do have a deck to show you on Hand Control and Mind Crush. So let's take a look at that one. Okay, so here Instead of showing a solo replay, since this deck depends so much on what's in your opponent's hand, Lucas actually tested this deck, and we're going to show you a replay of one of those test games. So thank you to Tetra for helping Lucas test here. So let's go. Also, look at how disgusting this hand is. Okay. So we've got the skill Millennium Eye. So you got to look at his hand as you guys set up speed duels, right? And then you took notes on what he had, right? So there you see in the chat box, Gaia Offerings Command Twister. And now you're going to set your 3 back row, which is drop off, and Mind Crush. This is so disgusting. You set Command Knight, you pass turn. Tetra draws, you're going to drop off that draw right away. It's the only card you don't know, now you know his whole hand again. You're going to Mind Crush, you're going to do Command Knight, you're going to get rid of that Command Knight. Now he has to summon Gaia, it's the only monster he has left. He's going to set his Twister and his Offerings, and he's going to go ahead and try to attack. That Command Knight takes that attack like nothing. You draw into another Command Knight. Oh my god. You're going to set that Command Knight too. Now see, usually you might have made the mistake of summoning that Command Knight, but because you know his card is Offerings, there's no reason for you to make that play. You might as well play defensive because, for one thing, you know you're going to lock down whatever he draws. There's no way. He's not going to get to keep it. And there you go. Drop off again. And then again, he can't kill the Command Knight. Now you have a command lock and he has to waste his Offerings on it. So as long as you draw something good here, like Blade Knight, you're feeling completely confident to now go in. Because you know this other card is just Twister, it can't help him. Look at how much advantage it gives you just knowing what's in his opening hand. Anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I just want to say that I knew he had Twister. I knew that was a brick. That was a bad decision from his deck building. I exploited. That's a good thing about the skill. If your opponent bricks, you let them keep their hand, and you know what they have, and they're not gonna be able to do anything about it. So Tetra has a dead Twister. Once he uses the Offerings, he's dead. So I think looking at the hand and letting him keep the brick was good. It was and also like you said, I would have attacked with both Command Knights, because they had 2000, but since I knew he had Offerings, I was like, no, I'm just gonna play more defensively.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's like, it's not only that you can Mind Crush one card from his hand, which is a big deal, obviously, because you can take away whatever card you want. You took out that Command Knight, which would have helped him. But it's that you can know exactly what his back row is, so you play around it, right? So that's so like important. Like, think about in all of speed duels right now, if you knew what your opponent's back row was in the first 2 turns, how much damage you could do to them before they ever recovered. Like, because of the drop off, this is like turn 4 and you still know every single card that's he's had so far. So I mean, it's amazing. And it's not like a typical like inner conflict type of skill where it gives you like a +1 or something, but the knowledge, it's a very big brain skill in a way, in that it gives you the information and then it's your job to play around it, right? So
yeah, for sure.
All right, so let's take a look at the full deck here. All right, here's the deck. I'm just gonna let you talk about it. It's your deck. Go for it.
Yeah, so you have the Water Toolbox package. Yeah, Blade Knight, because it's the strongest level 4 monster. You want to have the strongest you can without having to special summon or something. You want one that you can normal summon. So you have Command Knight, Blade Knight, that's the standard. You also have one Exile Force, because you also playing 2 Reinforcement of the Army. So sometimes you want to tribute any monster he has. You have to remember that since you're looking at their hand, you know when you want to use Exile Force. And then you have the Mysterious Guard. That's a very beautiful card because it doesn't let them draw, because it bounces back the monster to the deck. It could also bounce one monster to the hand. It could also bounce itself. If you have Command Knight and Mysterious Guard, you can bounce one to the deck and then bounce that one to the hand, and then you can keep reusing. And then if your opponent draws the monster, and you want to get rid of it, you use drop off. But if you don't want to, if you think that the monster is a brick, you don't use drop off. Just let them draw the monster, and then next turn you're gonna use drop off because you know what they're gonna draw. So yeah, 2 drop offs. The problem with drop off is that if the opponent draws a quick play like Cyclone or Book of Moon, they can still chain it. So that's not very ideal, but still it's a very good card. You can play 3 if you want. Then you have 3 Mind Crush. The problem with Mind Crush, it only works if you go first. So if your opponent doesn't know what you're playing, they're gonna let you go first. But then, if they catch up to what you're doing, I don't think they're gonna let you go first. So Mind Crush can be dead unless your opponent can search with Union decks or Reinforcement of the Army. Whatever deck searches, you can use Mind Crush. Otherwise, you can side it out if you're not going first, because it's not that good. But you can also use Mind Crush with Mysterious Guard. They know you know what they're drawing, so you can use that. And then you have generic back row to spells, to traps, for Jinzo spell canceller. And in the side deck, you're gonna see the same trend. 2 other spell back rows, 1 mirror wall, 2 cyclones, very generic, very fun deck. I don't think it's gonna be top tier, but I think it's gonna be a very good rogue.
Yeah. Also, one point I want to make on spell canceller. It's not too big a deal to worry about because your Blade Knight will usually be enough to get over it. So, and that's another reason to have Exiled Force as well. Is that if Jinzo is bothering you and you have all these traps, then you can just road up for your Exiled Force and pop that Jinzo. So it's a very, it's a toolbox deck almost, right? Where you have options to deal with almost anything, but it's just a matter of how many times are you going to have to deal with Spell Canceller? How many times do you have to deal with Jinzo? And if you have to deal with Jinzo 2 or 3 times, then maybe you need the offerings, right? So something like that. Any other spicy little meme options you have for this deck?
Yeah, I think we can mention that Goblin of Greed, he suggested a deck different to mine. You can check them out on Discord.
Yeah.
He played Gaia. I don't play Gaia because I want to search with Reinforcement, but there's a lot of options. I don't think this is supposed to go with Warriors necessarily. This can be you just need Mind Crush and then Millennium Eye and maybe some drop out. That's all you need.
Yeah, there is one interaction I want to talk about though before we're done here, and that is that we got a new fairy monster, Kelbeck, and it's 1500, 1800 defense, and any monster that attacks it returns to the hand. Now, what's relevant about it being Earth and 1500 is that it can be floated into with Giant Rat, which we also got. So you can use that in combination with Mind Crush as well, where you bounce their monster after they attack. And another old classic card we got that does the same thing, it just can't be floated into with Rat, is Wall of Illusion. So again, just some options there to bounce cards back to your opponent's hand. And obviously, while I'm talking about Giant Rat floating into bouncers, there's the old classic Hyper Hammer Headache. So a lot of options there to just bounce cards back to your opponent's hand, and then you can use Mind Crush to get rid of them that way. And one quick thing about Mind Crush is that it is such a good card if you hit 2. So if I say Jinzo and my opponent has 2 Jinzos in their hands, that's a 1 for 2, and you almost win the game just off of that, because that's such a big advantage. It's really an amazing card. It has so much potential, especially if they search for a card and they have a second copy already in their hand. That's such a good Mind Crush. It's amazing. So anyway, yeah. So cards like these give life to something like Millennium Eye.
One more thing, Mind Crush, very good card against Moth. If they use Parasite, you chain Mind Crush, no Parasite.
Yes, exactly. And because Parasite never even made it to the field, you just discarded it from the hand. It doesn't even get its second effect where it gets to summon a Moth from hand. No, it doesn't get anything. It just fizzles to the graveyard because you mind crushed it. That's a very good. Thank you for calling that out.
If you're playing a conflict deck and you see a Jinzo or a spell canceller, you just discard them so they don't have their skill yet available.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So whatever, in any way you can predict your opponent's card, Mind Crush is amazing for that situation. Okay, so just want to give a final shout out to all these psychic skills, and that is to a new one.
What does Esparoba do?
Yeah, he's a psychic duelist. So this skill is very bad. It's a meme. His other one is much better. I already talked about that one in a previous video. But this one is you pay half your life points to basically stun one card, or you randomly declare a card in your opponent's hand, and if you're right, you do 500 damage. Like, it's just, there's no reward for this. You don't plus, you don't get full knowledge of your opponent's hand like Millennium Eye. You get knowledge of one card at the cost of half your life points, and it's once per duel. This skill is absolutely terrible, and I don't really think there's much else to say about that. Okay, the final skill, there's another old skill, but this is actually like a meta skill that we want to talk about. So this is Twisted Personality.
Yeah, so Twisted Personality is one of the most overused skills. I think it's gonna be used a lot. It has a lot of potential as a generic skill, not even as a burn skill or as a stall skill. So right now they got a boost with Cosmic Cyclone, because you pay 1000 life points, you banish any back row, so you have the best back row removal, and paying 1000 life points helps you gain a counter. So I think they got a small boost. I think we're gonna see a lot of them, because we're getting more generic decks or decks that can play without a skill. So that's a really good skill, amazing skill. So I think it's gonna be used a lot in many decks. So I don't think bringing a specific deck is gonna be worth your time. So just know that it's gonna still be here for a good time.
Yeah. And speaking of old meta, there are actually a couple of decks that we want to show you, a conflict deck and a cocoon deck, which are obviously old meta skills. So let's take a look at those. Okay, so here is the dark conflict deck that you can now play with new dark cards in the box. So you can already see the new monsters, your level 4 lower monsters are Breaker and Kaiku. They're both new dark spellcaster monsters. Kaiku is very good for it, anti-graveyard, like being an anti-graveyard strategy. So if your opponent is doing like Relinquished loop or even Union combination, this can put a big stop to their strategy by either banishing monsters they need in their graveyard from their graveyard, or it can just go ahead and stop them from banishing their own cards completely. So it even stops something like Haunted Shrine, the graveyard effect, from activating. So one of Conflict's weaknesses in last format was that none of your monsters were big enough to get over Despair. But now with Kaiku, they can no longer use Haunted Shrine in the graveyard. So if you have Kaiku and Jinzo, Haunted Shrine is completely negated everywhere. Now this is a deck that you made, so is there anything else you want to say about it?
I think it's the same meta in that regard, in the conflict regard. But yeah, just new monsters. You can also still use the warriors. We're just trying to show something new. And shoutouts to Goblin of Greed or Giant Spain, because he showed me the Dark Conflict backbone, which is Breaker, Kaiko, and Jinso. I think he also plays Spell Canceller. But yeah. Yeah, and I mean the great thing about Breaker is that it's 1600 exactly after you've used its effect to remove a back row. So it's still 4000 damage when combined with Jinzo. So this is still a very OTK deck in my opinion. And then obviously you see there's new staples in here. You can use Book of Moon and Mirror Wall. You can use any new staples you want. You can use Shrink. You can use Widespread Ruin, whatever you feel like you need. But yeah, it's just Conflict. It's an OTK deck that steals their monster and tributes it, and then you try to go for game. It's not complicated. It's not a lot of different. You know, you got Spell Cancer. You're siding it because you're saying he plays it.
you've got Lost Wind because it counters certain decks, which could be a problem. But, I mean, it's a very simple deck. We don't need to go too much into it. And let's look at Moth. Okay, this is just the new Dark Moth deck using the new cards again of Breaker and Kaiku. Now, in case you haven't realized already, at least what me and Lucas think is that Breaker and Kaiku are two of the best new monsters, at least level 4 lower monsters in the box. And because they're dark, this gives them a lot of synergy with any deck that can play Allure of Darkness. And obviously, we know Dark Moth was top tier for a long time in Speed Duels. So this just boosts Dark Moth even more because it makes your monsters better. You don't have to run Dekoichi anymore. There's no need for Gap, although you could still run it if you want to. As you can see, it's in the side deck here. But because we got Nobleman of Crossout, this is actually an easier way to deal with your opponent's face down monsters. And then you're allowed to apply pressure with Breaker and Kaiku, and even Newdoria if it comes down to that, until your opponent is forced to counter you and play a monster face up, and then obviously you go for your Moth combo. Anything else you need to add to that?
So just keep in mind that last time the Dark Moth had the issue that it could only deal damage through the skill or through burn traps. So that's why it lost to Jinso in the Jinso format. But now we have big monsters that can compete with the other big monsters. So now the deck can give pressure outside of the skill. And you have Breaker that can destroy back row. So it could ensure the OTK. So that's really good. You have Kaiko that could break the stall graveyard effects. So that's also really strong. But yeah, overall, Nobleman of Crossout, it helps destroy the weakness that is face down monsters. So you can still give pressure through the big monsters. So yeah, I think the deck is decent. Like Kursov said, I think Moth will still be part of the meta. I don't know what tier, I don't know how good, how common. But Moth, I think it still has good potential. But it still loses to Spell Canceller. But you can beat over Spell Canceller with Breaker or Kaiko.
Yeah.
Or even Crash with the new Doria.
Right, yeah.
But Spellproof Armor is gonna be a different story.
I was gonna say that, yeah.
Kill on your own monster and then swing. So yeah.
Yeah, Spellproof Armor is the biggest weakness. And then the other weaknesses are Cosmic Cyclone, which we talked about, and also Mind Crush, which we also talked about. So if they either banish your Parasite or they call it out when they chain Mind Crush to it and get rid of it from your hand, that can stop your combo. But other than that, Moth is still very, very strong, and a 3500 beater is still stronger than all the other boss monsters except Valkyrion. But it's still stronger than all the tribute monsters. It's still stronger than all the machines in Spellproof Armor. So if you summon Moth and they don't have back row, then you can still kind of dominate the game from that point forward.
Also keep in mind that Lost Wind also hits Moth.
Yes. Yeah, that's correct. Now, the second effect won't work on Moth since it only works on extra deck monsters. But cutting Moth's attack in half can be very relevant because it makes it 1750, which actually makes it weaker than even all the good level 4s in the game, like Kaiku, right? So it's a big deal. Now, I want you to talk about this card that you have in your side deck here. This is spicy. This is Solitary Sword of Poison.
Yeah, I think if you have a 7k Moth attacking into anything, I think it's game. So I think you can side it for a sneak attack, a sneak cheese win. I think it's really good, but don't play it in main deck because it's not that good. It's just if unexpected. But yeah, I just want to say that I think Moth is not that good anymore because first we got a lot of counters to Moth, but also we got generic cards that could deal with Moth. Like now you have Mirror Wall, Shrink. Now you have Widespread Ruin, Draining Shield. There's a lot of answers to Moth. So I think the only place that Moth has right now is in the OTK.
Yeah.
I think that's the only place where I could see Moth. Relying on the on the board presence of a 3500 is not gonna be that easy anymore. We have better cards, better removal. We have Soul Exchange. We have a lot of new decks. So I think Moth is only good for an OTK, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and that's how you made this deck, right? You have six back row hate in this deck, so it's really more of an OTK deck than Moth was before. Also, one thing I want to point out is with the Sword of Poison, you can combine it with Gap if their opponent's playing a stall deck, and now all their monsters are forced to attack position, and you have a 4400 to attack them all with. So that's kind of scary too. You don't only have to put it on Moth; you can also put it on Gap. But yeah,
and if you wanna secure the OTK with Moth, you can also play in the side Mind Crush, and you just say Sphere Karibo, and then you can go for the free OTK if you think the opponent has Sphere Karibo.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you already have the OTK and they don't have Sphere Karibo, then you win anyway. So the penalty for guessing wrong with Mind Crush doesn't matter at that point. That's just something to point out. And actually, now I have one deck that I made that I want to show before we end the video. Alright, so here's the deck I made, and this is just a Warrior Toolbox deck. Nothing special here. It has Warrior. It's just another conflict deck. However, instead of focusing so much, there is one Jinzo in here, and I'm siding two. But instead of focusing on the Jinzo OTK, this is more of a control deck. So your warriors are Command Knight and Exiled Force, and Rhoda is to search whichever one you need. But in addition to that, you also have Freed, the Matchless General. Now, this card could be really good if the meta is spell card heavy. So if you've got your things like Soul Exchange that targets, you've got Book of Moon that targets, you've got Shrink that targets. So all these spells that targets, if you read Freed, he negates all those spells that target it, and it destroys them. And if I'm not wrong here, Parasite is also going to get negated by here, because Parasite is consistently an equip card, and equip cards consistently target. I think that's the ruling. Again, this is one of those rulings where I'm never 100% sure about. But then you've got a Giant Rat, which will just float into other Giant Rats for stall, or it can float into Exiled Force, or if your opponent is done attacking, which is really cool because they kill your first rat, you summon another rat, they have another monster. If they kill the second Giant Rat, then you float into your Exiled Force. Now they have no more attacks left. Boom. You Exiled Force Tribute to pop that. Now, speaking of Exiled Force, another way to grab it potentially is with Freed. So what I didn't mention with Freed's effect is that in your draw phase, you can add for a level 4 lower warrior. So it's a Rhoda every turn instead of your normal draw if you want it to be. So that's really good. Other than that, the deck just needs a little bit of protection, so I put in a couple of Sphere Karibos, siding the third one, siding the Lost Wind in case there's a deck that gives you trouble, siding a creature swap because if you have floaters, maybe you should side creature swap. Just some basic things. Now, maybe the deck needs more protection. Maybe you could put in something like Book of Moon, but then I didn't want to go too far beyond 20 cards. Like, it's already 21, so maybe the deck is too slow sometimes. However, I think it's a cute little Warrior Toolbox deck. Anyway, that's all we got for you this episode. Terra Master and Lucas Gaylord out.